Welcome to today's podcast. My co-host Karen. How are you doing today, Karen? I'm Chuck Marple, by the way. Wow. Yeah, well, we had 69 this morning, but it's going up to 96. On the other hand, we're going to have 58 by the weekend, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And I can start wearing my wool kilts as well as my regular kilts. So it's exciting times. I was preparing to talk today for us our discussion, there's so much going on with the former president, and that's what's going to be the focus of almost everything we do today. But I came across this one thing about a guy named John Gibbs. Uh, it is rare to find a super conservative, a black Republican. It's even more rare to find one who had a college background and educated and everything, and who wanted to repeal the 19th Amendment. Now, as every woman knows right now, or ever should know, right now women's rights are under attack, from body autonomy to voting rights and to contraception and to all kinds of things. There's many in the MAGA group which prefer to keep you guys barefoot and pregnant. And they're doing everything in their power, particularly to keep you pregnant. But this man, back in college days, set up a group that talked about repealing the 19th Amendment. Now I guess he's trying to walk back what he says, but I'm just amazed that this day and age that any person, let alone a minority person, who's trying to take away rights from somebody who fought for those rights for a long time. The belief that women are incapable of running uh, anything in government is appalling to me, let alone just the vote. I mean, we have seen Golda Meir do a great job in Israel. We saw Margaret Chamberlain, the Iron Lady, being able to do a great job in Britain. We had a queen for 70 years that people loved and adored, and her son, not so much probably. So, and we've had other countries. We are one of the rarity out there that we've never had a woman leader. And that's a sad thing. The closest we got is Kamala Harris as vice president. And to think about taking away those rights is disgusting. In all honesty, I would love to see a woman become president. I don't think they could do anywhere. I know they couldn't do any worse than number 45 did, and probably much better than half or more of the presidents. It's time to get to have somebody who has a little bit of empathy and compassion, and less likely to send our young men and women into war. And it's very frustrating. But that's enough. I think that they would think more about the what it causes. That not that if it came down to it, they wouldn't be any less to do the right thing. I'm just thinking that they might think twice a little faster when they're sending their children to war. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's a generational thing. I don't know. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought of that point of view, but yeah, all that is so true. I'm just saying that I think that women would think more about things. In fact, women, because they use both sides of their brains, generally think about everything better than men do. And I think that not all men, not all women. I mean, the only truest statement you can make about men and women is to, at this point, anyways, the absolutely strongest man is slightly stronger than the absolute strongest woman. But every other basis is nothing is true, and that's pure strength. But just to finish up on this one, many years ago now, I went to watch training at Marine Corps base, Paris Island, and the people who were in there said, there is a big difference when they have this thing called the crucible, which is like the final test before before you get the lobe and anchor. And it's like a 48-hour thing. You march 5 miles, and you have to do all these tasks. And they said the difference between men and women, men tried to barrel through it, and more of them failed. Women tended to find a way to work together to be successful. So more women, on the average, were successful killing the crucible as men were, which I think was a very interesting viewpoint. But it's true. I think women are more think things through better than they're more. They try and say women are more emotional, and that's not true. Okay, so I hope that clarifies things a little bit better for you. Okay, no, I'm not. No, 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 no. Uh, Basically, the past 48 hours have been hell for Donald John Trump. He, of all the times that he's been turned away with the 2020 election, right from the early days after the election, including many judges he appointed, and every time they asked for one thing, they asked for evidence. And when no evidence was obliged, they said, it's done. They threw him out. Some of them were ridiculously trying to do things. In 60 cases for the election, they did that. Uh, the former president found one of his appointees who covered for him, who gave him more than he deserved, and that was Judge Cannon. Well, they put a master, and it was one of the two people that Donald Trump asked for, and this master took them to task because they could not prove anything about those classified documents. They could not prove that he had, in fact, declassified them. So he said, I'm not going to worry about that on that point on it, and we're not going to fool around with listening to you. If you don't have it, the evidence, then I'm going to take that there's no evidence and decide in favor of the DOJ. That was wonderful to begin with. And then we get into the nice afternoon, and the appeals court, two Trump appointees and one Democrat appointed judge were on the three that were drawn for that, unanimously said that the DOJ can go back in and take all the classified documents out and start working on the criminal probe. Those are two wonderful, wonderful things that happened over the past 48 hours. We'll get to some more in a minute, but I don't want to do this without getting your input into it too. What you think? Well, and what the appeals court basically said that it should not matter about reputation. Also, one of the important things the appeals court did is keep the Trump lawyers from seeing those classified documents. And that is big because number one, this is not part of an indictment yet, so they have no right to see these things until there's an indictment. They had no right to be part of this. That's what the master's job is to do, to make these declarations. And by pulling them off by the appeals court saying, okay, you guys can take these classified documents and do what you got to do with them. Make sure that there's no damage to the national defense on this, which is a really scary thing because they could very well be, because those documents open to anybody who come across, and who knows what he said to people, saying, oh, I got the classified documents, telling the wrong people, and we know we can trust him to keep his mouth shut. Not. And the other thing is that they can keep on going with that criminal thing. And the thing is, the truth of the matter is, the DOJ is going to follow that policy of not coming up to any indictments or any decision making until after the midterms, because they don't want to. Don't want to show that political end. Mhm. Well, and you go back to it, that several of them, including Cipollone, told him, "You must turn these documents over to archives before you leave as soon as you're out of this position." That by January, I think it was 20th, those documents had to be turned over to the archives. There was no ifs or ands or buts about it. He was told, and he can't play any other game because he was told multiple times. In so many areas that he says, "Oh, I don't know," but yeah, he was told. No, that stuff goes to the Smithsonian. Yeah, that stuff goes to the Smithsonian or the archives. Well, that's about what it was. I think that's how we could think about him, that he was evicted because he certainly did not want to leave. We go ahead. Here's the really good thing about what the appeals court did too. It took the pressure of Deary off on those 100 documents. He's not even going to see them because he said, I'd rather not see them. I'd rather not know what's in them. And, we talked about that before. With this FISA, his FISA experience, he understood that on the need to know, as you said. Well, that would be bad enough for 48 hours. However, we have a lot more going on. Let's go from the bottom up. January 6th committee meeting again in a public hearing, 1 o'clock on the 28th. They believe, they're telling us at this point, this will be the last public hearing before they make their public report. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to be very interested in seeing how that goes. The second long thing that has been going on is the investigation by this Fannie in Georgia, and she's a DA for one of our counties, one of our largest counties. And she's gone into a lot of detail on the Trump and the Trump sycophants that were involved in that, trying to change who the electors are going to be from Georgia and other states. The sad thing about that is that they still had the opportunity to go in and mess with some of the machines. And again, the machines are used by multiple states. So there's an ability to perhaps hack into those machines. And now Arizona, they had to spend like $10 million to replace all the machines that cyber group were doing, who had no experience, and they gave more votes to Biden before it was done. It just shows how it goes. So there's a lot going on. If that wasn't bad enough, the whole Trump organization is now in the spotlight of the New York State Attorney General, perhaps the Southern District Federal Court, and even the IRS. And by some miracle, maybe that DA in Manhattan will get some stones and go after him as well, because Letitia James, they're from New York State, who campaigned originally on the act that she was going to get these things that Trump knew, because she knew he was doing things, and who has that political taint because of that. It doesn't take away from what she found and what she gave to them. Over 200 pages of things that he did wrong. 200 objects, actually. Now, I tell you something. If you're a real estate appraiser and you were appraising for a client, and they said, okay, I want my house to be worth more. I want you to say, my house is 10,000 square feet, but I want you to say it's 40,000 square feet. Now, you go out and you advertise this as 40,000 square foot place, and I want $300 million for it. You think they're going to do it? Of course not. They're not going to do it. That is just one thing. She went out and said, look, no apartment in New York City has ever sold for more than $300 million. We can go in and measure your apartment, your triplex in there, and know that it's only 11,000 square feet. Fraud, fraud, fraud. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as in any way, shape, they can't be any part of any business in New York State. And if the IRS gets on this, going to be some issues on that. On this, the $250 million is the minimum. It could get into the billions if it goes to court. When it goes to court, we don't know if it goes to a jury trial. A jury trial may say, look at what he's tried to get away with. Forget it. Look at all the billions that were involved in here. I mean, what's well, see, the nice thing in a civil trial is a whole different ball of wax. That is, you can go along with that, and the fact that he and Eric took the Fifth Amendment, they emphasized that yesterday and everything because they took the Fifth Amendment. They can have an adverse effect on the verdict because they presume, and Trump himself said that before about the Fifth. He said when somebody takes the Fifth, they admit they're guilty. Well, look at the amount of time you're taking the Fifth, you're guilty. There's no two ways about it, you know. It's just, well, we used to love going to Atlantic City in the beginning when we first started going that way. We go on a Saturday morning and come back Saturday night, a 1 day trip. And finally, after retiring, we started going and spending overnights there, and sometimes 3, 4 nights. And he single handedly destroyed the casino business in in Atlantic City, as he did an airline, as he did his wine, as he did his steaks, as he did the Trump University. He did all these kinds of things because he is one. If we could say the Trump family and those closely associated have one thing, they are one thing. They are grifters. They use other people's money, put the other people's money on the line, and very rarely do they lose money themselves. They make sure they're covered for everything. They are nothing better than a whole family of grifters. And I'm sorry they could say wonderful things about Ivanka and all and the others, but they were all knowledgeable of what was going on. They all lied. Well, we don't get things from China. Well, made in China. All these kinds of things. And the thing of it is he doesn't help himself. He had a rally the other day, and they were playing the QAnon anthem in the background. Now, if there's anything crazier than Trump, it's the QAnon. That supposedly this person, Q, is an inner worker in the government somewhere and knows every secret there is to know. And this cable of cannibalistic liberals eating babies. I mean, and the thing is, it is so ridiculous that it should be thrown out of the hand. And yet a man went with a semi-automatic weapon to this pizza parlor where supposedly all this was in Washington, D.C., and was ready to shoot it up and go after people. So people are willing, they've got people so psyched up about this fraud, this whole thing. It is so scary. Hmm. Yeah, you only have one nutcase that is a conservative MAGA. Yeah, part of them, he also believed that that his father was still alive too. That he was being maintained to put the print on that the former president, number 45, was going to become the supreme leader, and that's the truth that he wants to become the supreme leader. It just shows, you know. The problem that we all had from the Republican Party in 2016 forward is Trump was always such a joke in the New York scene. Regis Philbin, who was a pretty good friend and buddy of his, used to make fun and he called him the Donald. If you look at him in the movies, he comes off as a really odd figure. I mean, I can see at one time he was relatively attractive, but yeah. Well, he was good for it. Well, more Morning Joe. He was a guest on their show for years, and then they started seeing what he was like as a politician. They said, "No, back off!" And look at how he turned on them. Look at what the thing he said about his now wife. The man does not know how to behave. He is a boy in a fat man's clothing, and there's not much we can say. He constantly makes statements that make no sense, and they listen to him like he's a god. And that drives me crazy too, because uh, people who claim to be Christians are not following anything that they should be. I mean, one of the important things that Jesus said is to be humble. And in the great commandment, he says, love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, and body and soul. And the second part is like this, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that these two commandments rest all the law. Not the 12, not the 12, the 10 commandments, not all the Jewish law and Torah and everything else, but that basic thing. And I think that the problem that of his time, of Jesus' time, is the problem that many people have today, is they want a conquering hero. And he came, and Trump came off as this conquering hero. Oh, I'm going to take care of all yours. He did squat good for this country. I don't think we can all honestly say there was one long-lasting positive thing that he did that I can think of. I'm sure there were one or two things that might have been better than they had been before. I mean, one of the things, I'll be honest, there's a lot of presidents in my lifetime that have gotten reputations bigger than they deserve. John F. Kennedy comes in. John F. Kennedy, so many people who never was there when he was president and before think he's the greatest thing ever lived. He was not a great president. He might have been a great president if he would have had a second term. We don't know. It might have changed things about Vietnam and everything else. Ronald Reagan, a saint to many Republicans, did a lot of bad things for this country. Part of the reason we had this mortgage crisis in 2008 had to do with Reagan deregulating banks, allowing banks to get into risky investments that they shouldn't have been. And the same thing, Obama had the makings of a good president, but I would never consider him a great president. He's in the middle of the road president. Is Biden going to be a great president? Biden may be a very good president before he gets done. I don't know. We don't even know he's going to even try for 2 terms. But we can honestly say that Donald John Trump, historians in the future, and people today, hi, look, kitty, are going to say that he is among the bottom 5, if not the bottom 3, if not the bottom of it. And it's constantly, as we look at this man through different lenses, we're seeing how bad, how dangerous he is. My own feelings, had he been president after 2020 and Putin wanted to take over Ukraine, it would be Russian control today. And we wouldn't have a closer united NATO and then expect to expand in NATO. I mean, every major country in Europe, with possible exception of Switzerland, including Sweden, who has been neutral for 300 years, wanting to join NATO. So there's a lot of miss on things. We could bring up Putin, but I don't really want to get into that because Putin alone and the Ukraine war is its own thing, and that may be one of the things we're going to do in the future. As I hinted a little bit about in the last one, I have a commitment from one of my former colleagues to be part of a teacher forum that we're going to have on here in the future. I'm going to hear on one more, and then I'm going to ask Julie, who's the one who said yes, maybe to recommend people, and we'll see how that works out. So be looking for that. We will be talking, I think, about the Ukraine war and some of that shortly, and anything else that comes up. But today was the focus on Trump and what has happened to him in 48 hours and over the next few weeks are going to make a huge difference. The one key point I want to leave you with before I let Karen make any comments is this what Merrick Garland said and what the AG of New York said yesterday. No one is above the law. I don't care what you want to think. Unfortunately, Eileen Cannon briefly had the former president above the law because he was the former president. And look what happened to Gerald Ford when he put Richard Nixon above the law because he didn't want to send a former president to prison. And what Nixon did is so small in comparison. Your thoughts, Karen? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that we have to have this accountability, not just for our sake, but for the world's sake, because democracy is in danger throughout the world. And we may not have the best, have the great, perfect system because there is still income inequality that's beyond belief. But at this point in history, there's nothing that's worked out better for people and have more people be successful. We have tried to do great things. Are we there? Nowhere near. But we are trying, and we need to look at ourselves with a critical eye. You know, you can go out and say, for instance, Warnock has been saying, Walker has been saying that Warnock says this is a bad, the country's in a bad spot and everything, and he's a divider. While Walker says, I'm a uniter. Well, you're not. We need to have a real uniter. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. Well, thank you, Karen, for being here again. I do love having you as the co-host. I thought that was a great idea well over a year ago, and it's gone forward really well. And I got to thank listeners because we had one of the largest listeners things a couple of podcasts ago, and we have some good ones since then as well. So I appreciate that. Tell other people about it. It's we're out there. We're going to talk about the hard things, and we're going to talk honestly about them and do other things. So God bless you. God bless yours. God bless and keep our troops wherever they are. God bless the Ukraine and keep them safe. And I think that's about it. Goodbye all.